Dude, I don't have anything. This is Nick's job.
I like it.
Pew pew.
Yeah, are you ready?
No.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe. Okay, go.
Hello, welcome to Showboys. We're here. It's Jeff, Dad, I should say, and yours truly, here to talk about a fantastic movie that we just recently watched. We're going to be reviewing A24's latest movie, Civil War, and I'm sure we'll probably get into some other shenanigans along the way. But before we do, just want to thank you for tuning in and shout out our top tier patrons, Tim B, Yusuf H, and Joe C. Thank you guys for your lovely patronage and all of our other patrons. You guys are awesome. We appreciate your support. You could head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast and check out all we have to offer over there. Let's get right into the episode, and that is our review of A24's Civil War. Anytime we're reviewing something, we always start just with our initial thoughts. So, Dad,
Yes.
what do you think? As spoiler-free as you can at the top, what were your initial thoughts? And then after this section, that'll be like the spoiler warning, and we'll get like into the nitty-gritty of all the details.
I went into this movie with zero expectations, and because of that, I was blown away. I politically lean one way. I know that was kind of a point in a discussion that was had. I was okay. I didn't feel attacked. It was very easy for me to just sit there and enjoy it because I was so removed from any political bias. And I think that's kind of like what you have to do. But no, I was happy with the way that they delivered a lot of the different scenes, and we'll get into it, but like, man, there was not much really happening as far as story and characters go. But anyway, I feel like it was great.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with A24 movies, the majority of the movie, you kind of feel like maybe not much is happening, but they always deliver, and you have to know what you're getting into when you go into an A24 movie too. They're not for everyone.
And that's the thing. Like, this was my first A24 experience. No idea what to expect. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, they're good, and they're like, I don't want to use the word like artsy movies, but they kind of are. They're indie, artsy, usually packed full of commentary of some sort, and in trying to like convey the commentary that they're packed full of, they usually take very interesting and unique, avenues to say the things that they're trying to say. This one was pretty tame, honestly. This was
Really?
a really tame A24 movie. The last A24 thing that I watched actually was the Netflix series Beef. And that show still is like surprise show of the century for me. I loved it. Everyone needs to watch that show. It's so great. There's a lot of great A24 movies and projects like that should be watched. This one I feel like is one of those things. Alex Garland is a great director. He always does a pretty good job with his storytelling. My approach was A24, this is going to be great. I love A24 stuff. However, I did not fully understand how, like, what angle of, the Civil War, we were going to get. Like, is it going to be focused on the war and the politics like everyone feared, especially in our Discord? Or, which, spoiler alert, it does not at all, actually. Instead, we follow, this group of press journalists that are covering the war. And that kind of caught me off guard. But in typical A24 fashion, at least for me, my true appreciation for the movie didn't happen until after the fact. Like, I'm driving home, processing everything that I watched, thinking through it, really enjoyed what it had to say. And I'm super excited to like really get into the weeds and pick things apart and like really flesh out all of the details.
I feel like this is a nod to Garland because I'm kind of in the same boat you are. Like, I walked out of the theater, like, I was happy that I spent this money to go see it. But like, I took my kids with me to see it. My older two, not all of them, not all 25.
Yeah, Jeff really needs to go on discount days. Let me
I
tell you, especially if it's a family affair.
We stood out there probably for like 15 minutes after the movie was over, out in the parking lot, just talking about it. And like, and I've even talked to some guys at work that hadn't seen it, but like, kind of just not giving anything away, but just sharing my experience and like that it's okay, it's safe to go see, you know.
Let's just get this out of the way right here, and then we'll go into the spoiler talk. So I'm not like discrediting people's feelings and opinions and things of that nature, but being afraid to go see this movie in theaters because you think alt-right people are going to be there to beat you up and or murder you with weapons is quite possibly the single dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. How many right-winged slanted Republican slanted media productions and or screenplay writers and or directors exist in Hollywood that are successful? Not many. So let me just throw this out there. What angle do you think this movie is taking? This movie is not a quote unquote Republican wet dream, as I was told. This actually is the exact opposite. So, if anything, me sitting in the chair all alone, I was shaking in my boots, just wondering, what leftist liberal scumbag was going to come around the corner and attack me because, that's how I felt the entire time I was watching the movie.
I didn't.
I was just honestly just trying to do my best Jordan impression there.
I was waiting for Jesse Plemons to come out with a gun and like ask me where I was from to shoot me.
What kind of American are you, Jeff? Anyways, all that being said, if you go into this movie expecting a like heavy political, like why is the country in a civil war, which side is right, you are going to be severely disappointed. But I think what this movie accomplishes is so much more important than a right versus left, Republican versus Democrat type story. This is bigger than that, and honestly, was quite refreshing to see this talked about in media. Now let's go ahead and get into the details. Talk a little bit about the story, what's going on, and all that stuff. So, if you have not watched this movie and you are still listening to this episode, right here, this is your spoiler warning. So anything past this point, we're going to go heavy into the narrative of the movie and all that stuff. So pause, come back when you've seen the movie, or if you don't care, continue listening. With that being said, let's head into, what story's being told and all that fun stuff.
We've got a near future fractured America in the midst of a second civil war. You've got chaos everywhere. What I found really amazing about this is that it actually showed journalists' perspective, like kind of how it was like back in the day when they actually did their jobs, where they would follow along and they're just there snapping pictures and they're not showing an angle to puff up one side or the other. It's here's the information, do with it what you will. That was even said in the movie, that it's not their job to tell people how it is.
So the cast of characters, we have Lee, who's played by Kirsten Dunst, and Joel, who is played by Big Lots Pedro Pascal. But I'm gonna get roasted because he is actually like a known great actor who also
He was great.
Was alongside Pedro in Narcos. They're kind of the two main characters. Of course, we have the House Atreides Mentat.
Sammy.
Those are the three main characters, and they're joined by a young, aspiring journalist named Jesse, who Lee kind of meets in the beginning of the movie at an event, and she ends up tagging along on their journey, their goal. They're trying to get to the White House to get actual footage of the president on camera and interview something that hasn't been done.
It had been a long time.
Yeah. So Jesse kind of tags along. They're going through a small town, filling up gas. Jesse notices in the car wash behind the gas station, they have two dudes like strung up. And she's down there checking it out. One of the dudes from the gas station, is down
Super
there
weird.
with her, kind of making her feel really weird. Lee comes down, de-escalates the situation by having him pose in between these people, which, by the way, they're still alive. They're
Yeah.
still. He's like, I could just kill him right now, or we could beat him up a little more. And she's like,
He
oh, take a picture.
he's like trying to get her to decide for him. Like, should we
Yeah.
kill him or
It's pretty intense scene. Obviously, after they leave the gas station, Jessie is like wrecked. Like, that's a very heavy thing. Like, she's very distraught, and she's like, that's not right. Like, that's crazy. I couldn't even take a picture. Basically wrestling with the idea of like, why are we doing this? This is kind of messed up, really wrestling with the morality of the situation and whatnot. All that to say, the line you're thinking of, Lee is like, it's not our job to answer those questions. We can't ask those questions because one, you'll be like you are right now, like wrecked, because this is really messed up. But what she says, which is so great, is like, it's not our job to ask those questions. We just take the pictures and let the people decide, right? Something along those lines, which is very refreshing because I've been on that soapbox for several years now. I think I probably ranted about it on an episode or two before, but that kind of leads to the whole point of this movie. It's not the politics or the war itself. It's commentary on journalism, and specifically in this movie, war journalism, but I think across the board this applies. Garland even said in an interview that, journalism should just present the story, not the morality, like Lee said to Jessie in that car. And like, it's just a far cry from current day journalism and news coverage, right? And that's exactly what you talked about earlier, is like everything this episode, I feel like I'm just going to be on a soapbox the whole time. I apologize, but this is just something that has really bothered me for a long time. News is no longer news. It's entertainment and it's opinion. Everything, all the information given on both sides, such, I'm an extreme centrist. Okay. I lean more one way than the other, but I try to be in the middle because I think there is value on both sides, right? But news on both sides, it's just slanted to those opinions and viewpoints. Long gone are the days of, here's what happened. Here is the information of what happened. Don't tell us how to feel about what happened. We'll decide that. Just tell us what happened.
Well, many great points to that in the movie is that they showed everything. Like, they were constantly taking pictures. The one part where they took the three guys and put bags over their heads, and she was watching, but then she grabbed her camera and started taking pictures and they shot them. Like, it's brutal and ugly. Like, that was the point, to show, the state of a nation that's in a civil war. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be violent. So much violence. There was so much violence in this, and they didn't shy away from it.
Right. I snipped pieces of my conversation with Easton, and I'm just going to read them because I don't know if I could put them any better than this, but I thought it was great commentary on the state of journalism and media, with Lee and Jessie playing dual sides of the coin. Lee being unbiased and true, presenting the facts. In this case, their pictures with no slant. But Jessie, on the other hand, she's willing to do anything for the shot, once she gets over that hump after the gas station thing. Like, once she gets fully in, she's like fully in. But, in the beginning, go ahead.
Pause. Like, even so much so to like put her own life in danger more than that is needed, like standing out in the middle of gunfire to get that shot. Continue.
Yeah, in the beginning, she's still wrestling with the morality issues, right? But, interestingly enough, she's taking a lot of pictures of Lee and Joel in all of these scenarios, which I think is a very intentional thing that they did, where maybe she finds the act of journalism and what she's doing as like a rush. Maybe she wants to like show that the journalists are also important and in there. But there was a heavy focus on like a lot of the pictures she took included or were even aimed at Lee and Joel. Like, for example,
especially towards the end.
Yeah, well, yeah. So if you know, you know. But I think even in the beginning, like where she meets Lee, like Lee is up in the mess, like taking pictures, and Jesse's lurking back, taking pictures of Lee taking pictures instead of just taking pictures like Lee is, right? I think there's something important there. But yeah, so she's almost more obsessed with the art of journalism than being the eyes of the people amidst the conflict, right? And while I think there were some definite like political undertones, like I talked about earlier, I enjoyed that that wasn't the main focus or even really a focus at all. And I totally understand how that would infuriate people going in to see this movie for those reasons. But I also found it to be kind of poetic how things ended up playing out. But by the end of the movie, all of the, you know, quote unquote traditional journalists except for Joel were dead. So it's to me that kind of like symbolized the end of journalism, right? Sammy, the super old school journalist, he's dead. Lee, you know, dies at the very end. And like I've been talking about, my biggest beef with society today is the fact that news is no longer news. It's, you know, borderline propaganda slanted toward each side, untangling the morality of the news, like of the facts that are presented to us, but instead, you know, we're told how we should feel.
I think that was kind of my a little bit of a worry going into this, that it was just going to be propaganda, but I didn't feel that way at all.
Yeah, and then, you know, the character, like the almost heel turn that Jesse does, you know, my buddy found it a little bit jarring, but you know, how basically by the end of the movie, Lee and Jesse kind of flipped places where in the beginning, Lee is hardened, she's not affected by what's going on. And Jesse's like, you know, sobbing in the back seat, right? After the gas station. Two being the exact opposite, where, like you said, Jesse's, you know, sprinting out in the middle of the hallway while a firefight is happening just to get a great shot. And basically during that whole sequence at the end of the movie, I don't know if Lee is like having some PTSD type symptoms or something, but she is like,
she's losing it.
she's not, yeah, she's not all there. And which is understandable because they did a good job in the beginning of the movie kind of showing us through flashbacks some of the just atrocities that Lee had experienced in her many years of being a wartime journalist. And like the one that sticks out obviously is the dude, you know, it's kind of like tied up with a tire being lit on fire, which is insane. But like the things that Lee has probably seen throughout her career doing this is like insane. And I think by the end of this movie, they've finally taken their toll, right? And she's kind of essentially like not even taking pictures.
Yeah, she's like up against the wall, like sobbing, and Joel is
Yeah.
trying to like console her while Jesse's out there taking pictures, and Joel's got to yell at her to come over.
But I think Jesse's like the kid who's, you know, very new and very affected to literally turning into a sociopath, doing whatever she has to do to get like the perfect shot, which then led to the death of Lee. It kind of didn't come out of nowhere, you know, like it kind of was building naturally to that, because you see even like the way that Joel like got really excited when they were parking somewhere to get some sleep overnight. There was like a firefight going on, and he's like, we got to go there, like we got to do this, like I'm very excited. He just made that very clear by exactly what he said in that moment. But I feel like Joel's passion for what is going on affected Jesse more than Lee's like stoicness. I don't know.
Well,
But
yeah, I
anyway,
mean, she was Lee's hardened, like you said. I mean, she
yeah,
doesn't really have much to offer because she's seen some things, but Joel is I feel like at that point of his career has a lot more to offer Jesse, like more drive and enthusiasm, allegedly, but Joel has like a drive about him that is contagious. Like, yeah, I want to be like that. And then she encompasses that and becomes that.
Yeah.
But I would so argue, like, and this is the thing with character development in like different shows that kind of center around like an apocalyptic type setting, or even in this film, you cannot tell me that on the flip of a coin that you'd go chaotic, or like that you would just lose your mind, because we have no idea how we would react in a situation like that, in a world like that, right? Like, sure, it's going on around us, but like I feel like there's times in each of us that that switch would flip and we'd lose our minds, or we'd like do something that's totally uncharacteristic of ourselves. So I'm not that shocked by her changing so drastically, because we're all human. And a lot of us have not experienced a post-apocalyptic scenario in our lifetime and may never. So
Fingers crossed.
something clicks, like that fight or flight response, and everyone's different in
And
that situation.
and I think like, there's almost like a little bit of a power to being a part of the press in this situation. They have access to everything.
Dude, that's the crazy part. Like, they are like an extension of the troop that they're with. Because as soon as they show up with their press gear on, they're like, all right, you stay with me. You know, you
Yeah.
follow me into this room. You go here when I go here, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's wild how much
On either
they
side.
like incorporated them into what was happening. But I feel like if there were press there, I would not even notice. Like, I would be so focused on not dying that I would not be like, all right, hey, you with a notepad, come over here now. I'd be like worrying about my squad and myself. But
Right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just like, it was really cool to see that part and the attention to detail there. So I don't know if that's like legit how things work or not. One thing that just came to my mind, like while you were talking, that kind of I think helps support my case of Jesse less concerned about just capturing what is there and more concerned with putting her spin on it, is it's a subtle thing. But when they go into that town, right, and she makes Lee try on the dress and she asks to take her picture, instead of just taking her picture, she gets Lee to smile.
Mm-hmm.
So she's manipulating her subject to get the picture that she wants, right? It's very subtle, but she does it more than one time in that scene, because Lee's like, just take my picture. And then she compliments her again to get her to smile.
And
You
I saw that as a, hey, let's take a breather and be humans. Like, we're gonna just maybe you're right. But I
Everything's
saw it,
intentional, Jeffrey.
I don't know. I saw that as a chance for them to take a step back out of the situation, because they had even said it, like, there's a civil war going on right now, right? Because they were talking to the clerk.
Yep.
But which was also crazy too, because as soon as they went outside, Sammy was like, be subtle, but look up at the rooftop. They weren't stupid. They were removed from the situation. But just in case, I feel like, yeah, they're just having a breather,
Like I said, it might have just been like a subconscious thing, but you could see that trait kind of unfolding there. And even at the end of the movie, like, I don't think she's like some evil character, right? But she
He's
is
just really,
definitely, she's very much a sociopath though, because she doesn't even care about her new friend and or mentor.
but can we be like straight up?
Yeah.
Like, you would have to be, or like there's no chance of you not becoming one after seeing all this stuff happening right in front of your face.
Right. Yeah, but I think there's a line, because you can tell even as hardened as Lee is, she still cares about Joel and Sammy, right? And even Jesse at the start, because she doesn't want Jesse to come. because she doesn't want anything to happen to her. But yes,
I don't think following in a pit of bodies helped her either.
Probably not. I'm gonna go out on a limb. So, but before we move on to the characters, let us know in the comments. Do you agree with me? Like, is that little scene in the parlor of Jesse convincing, manipulating Lee into smiling for a picture the start of Jesse's downfall? I believe it is. Or are you on Dad's side, where he's just oblivious to every little thing?
Speaking of manipulation, geez, trying to manipulate our viewers and listeners.
Yes. Let's go into the characters.
So let's just address the elephant in the room. There was minimal character development. And normally I would have a huge problem with that. However, and this is probably another let's poll our audience to see who is right moment, but I didn't care. So the way I kind of process this post movie, so they're journalists, right? Cool. I mean, there's part of me that does care about them because they're human. I don't want them to die. I care about them enough.
It's very noble of you.
A very base human thing.
You're already better than Jesse.
Their focus was capturing what was happening. And it felt more like a biography or like a documentary. It did not feel like your traditional story. It was following journalists capturing events that were unfolding. So I didn't need a backstory for each character. I wanted to know what's happening. Like, give me what I need to see so I can digest it later. That's like the news. Give me information, unbiased, and let me process it later. And I felt like, dude, massive props to Garland in this regard. Like, and it's same with even the story. It's very straightforward. There's a civil war going on. Not much else needs said.
Yeah. Can I interject?
Please.
You know, we're not supposed to get the journalists their opinions or thoughts on the morality of the situation. We're just supposed to be presented with what's happening. And I think it's kind of a very brilliant way to also say that in the movie by not really getting to know the characters very well, because what you said, we're following journalists. So why? I mean, we do get to know the characters a little bit. We get to know Lee's backstory a little bit. We get like a very slight shred of Jesse's, but like it's very, very minuscule. But I think that's the point. They're the journalists. We're not supposed to know about them. And I think also that plays into my point, you know, we're not supposed to know the journalists, which I think like kind of plays into the very intentional point of seeing either Lee or Joel in most, if not all, of Jesse's pictures, because we're not supposed to know the journalists. We're supposed to see what's happening. And I get like, you know, we're in active war, we're in active combat, like they're with the squad, so they might be in the pictures. But do you understand what I'm trying to say? I think it's very intentional that they're in those pictures, and it's helping prove the point and the shift of the mentality between Lee and Jesse and their approach to the journalism.
But to argue it though, she is not a journalist.
She right, not yet, no.
A photographer. That's
what she wants to be, though.
She wants to be, but I think that this is like more so for her, like for her recollection, not so much for the intended viewer, if that makes sense, because she's still in that mindset. Like she's not quite there yet.
Right.
She's not at their level, obviously. So she's not going to be thinking the same. Like she's got to be instructed throughout the entire movie of how to be or how not to be.
That's fair. I don't know if I agree with it, but I'll let it slide. It's a fair point.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. So, well, that was one of the things that kind of made me not want to see this movie, is because it was about journalists.
Oh, really?
Like I was like, there's no clear hero or villain. Like it's just a war. and there's people, but I was pleasantly surprised, and like it just grabbed me right away. From the suicide bomber blowing up the water tank,
All right.
it grabbed me right away from that moment on.
Yeah.
But no, like it's crazy that the way that this story was presented was still good. Because like I think of a movie or show, I want solid characters, I want a solid story, and that wasn't given to me, but it was still good. Like I was still able to enjoy it.
Right.
I didn't need all the extra fluff to appreciate what was there. I mean, Garland intentionally left holes, like what you were saying before. Like it was intentional that a lot of this stuff wasn't laid out plainly. Like it was there, just like the journalist's jobs were presenting you with information, digest it later, have discussion. And I think very thought provoking and designed for discussion.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like the war itself was just a means to the end of the commentary, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not even important, honestly. The specifics of the war, like the reasoning, the sides, that doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Because the real story is, the rise of Jesse and the fall of Lee. Or, you could reverse that and say the rise of Lee, like finally coming back to her humanity from her like hardened state, which then eventually leaves her in a very cold state because she's dead rip. And the fall of Jesse, losing that innocence and having a moral compass and becoming a sociopath and costing possibly her mentor slash teacher slash colleague at this point her life. And not only doing that, but seeing it as a moment to capture a great picture and snapping pictures of her friend literally dying
Falling onto
over
her.
top of her. You literally don't get more psychotic than that.
Which is crazy too, because that actually is foreshadowed earlier on, because Jesse asked Lee, would you take a picture of me if I was dead or dying? And she said yes.
Yeah.
Which was actually a pretty cool payoff, because that's why it was so dramatic when it happened. Another really cool thing in reference to them both, but there was a cool effect in the video where they were showing Lee when she was starting to kind of lose her mind, the edges of the, like, whatever was in the view were kind of, there was some kind of effect on it. It kind of looked like, so she was in focus, but then the rest of the scene, it's kind of like if you were to go to a 3D movie and you didn't wear the glasses. But it was really toned down. But then the same happened with Jesse. Like I can't remember exactly when it was. Maybe the moment when she shot, not actually shot bang bang, but shot Lee as she was dying in front of her. There's just a part where she's kind of like leaned up against like a wall, not at the not DC, but before then. I can't remember exactly where it was, but then it started happening around that time.
Okay.
But then once they get to DC, obviously when she's actually having her breakdown, it's happening more there.
But while we're on topic of characters, Sammy was awesome, Joel was awesome, Jesse and Lee were great. But bro, can we stop putting Jesse Plemons in movies to only be in it for like 10 minutes? Like, I love Jesse Plemons, and the last two things I've seen him in, he was just like criminally underused. He actually wasn't supposed to be in this movie. I don't even think he's credited. Maybe he is now, but the guy who was supposed to play that role for some reason dropped out. And of course, Jesse Plemons is married to Kirsten Dunst, so she was just like, yo, you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then like literally killed it. My goodness, that guy, every time he is on camera in anything he is in, he is so good.
Can I also add to that? Like, arguably one of my favorite moments. like the worst moments, probably the darkest moments, to kind of show the state of the nation or a certain group, whatever group. He was amazing. I don't think I've actually seen him in much.
That's because when he is in stuff, it's for like 3 minutes.
But dude, like, he was so convincing. Like, the amount of anxiety I felt in that moment was so crazy. And another nod to Garland, I was totally in this. Like, I kind of felt like I was the fourth member of this journalist squad. I felt so much of it. Like, the immersion element was great for me. And that moment was great, even though it was very dark and terrible. But then, you know, Sammy to the rescue.
Yeah, dude.
They were all about to die.
Just destroying Jesse
And
with
then
the, what is it, Escalade? What were they driving?
something. And then, because it was funny, because something was said to him before they went down there to talk to Jesse. Like, you have to stay behind because you're fat and slow or something. Or he said it. Something like that. Something like that was implied. Like, you have to stay behind because you can't run or whatever.
Yeah, come on. I'm just looking at you, dude. But yeah, Jesse Plemons. Dude, please, somebody give this guy like a legit lead role for crying out loud.
We need more of Jesse Plemons, please.
Yeah.
We're pleading with the higher powers of Hollywood.
He has, so on his IMDb, actor, but also music department.
Oh,
little Plemons collab.
Can we sidetrack and take a pause and talk
You're
about
asking me about a sidetrack? Yes, please.
I don't know if this is an A24 thing, but the music kind of pulled me out of it.
Oh, really?
In this, a little bit.
Okay.
Not all of it. I think I wasn't expecting what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting like epic orchestra, instrumental,
yeah,
wartime music, marching drums or something.
Now that you mention it, I don't recall noticing much about the music. So again, I'll try to pay attention next time. But yeah, I mean, character is very minimal. The story of the war basically non-existent. But I think the story of Lee and Jesse, I think, was really good and did a fantastic job of delivering the commentary that he was trying to deliver. I guess we didn't talk about like the action sequences.
Dude, I was just about to say.
So good, dude.
So good. And I feel like they were well placed. Like, it wasn't outrageous or like you had your like little shootouts. There was like squad on squad in the city. The sniper scene was amazing.
Dude,
they're like covered in like
that whole conversation between the spotter and Joel was literally hysterical. Like, I laughed out loud.
Yeah, it was good.
Can you tell us what's going on here? He's like, oh, you must be retarded.
We're getting shot at.
She's like, hey, what's that guy in the building doing? And she's like, shooting at you? Okay, yeah, there you go.
Meanwhile, Lee is like laying in the grass,
like tripping, like straight up tripping. Yeah. And I also love how like you don't see the resolution of that moment. You just see the guy's like, okay, I think I got him. I appreciate like not having to show everything. I mean, he told us there, but like, I don't know. I like that. I did have one question though regarding the military action and stuff.
I'd love to answer that for you.
California and Texas make up the Western forces, right? And then Florida and the Carolinas and maybe some others. I think if you look up
13.
Yeah, there's some sort of alliance, and then you have the rest, which is the United States, right?
It's actually a map.
Yes, there is. Maybe depending on how jazzed up you are while you're editing this, it may or may not be on the screen right now.
It will be.
I don't know. Okay.
I'm calling it right now.
Don't make it awkward. So like towards the end of the movie in like the last third, right? When we're coming down the home stretch and the group makes it to the Western Forces like little powwow in the middle of the woods or whatever. How on earth does Texas and California have access to fighter jets? Like, I understand each state has their like national guard, which I'm assuming comes with some military equipment, right?
Speculate
But
in
like,
this
I
movie.
could suspend my disbelief for like, a couple tanks, right? But does each state have like an arsenal of fighter jets too that I was completely unaware of? Like, maybe I am just stupid and this is a really dumb thing for me to get hung up on, but as they're leaving there to make their final assault on Washington, like 8 fighter jets fly overhead. And I'm like, where the heck did those come from?
I mean, okay, so I can't answer this question, but I can speculate.
Okay.
Since there are other states that are in this alliance, they probably offered aid. So they probably said, hey, you bring your stuff, we'll bring our stuff, we'll meet here, and then we'll go.
Right, but like, do
Because that
states
whole,
have fighter jets? That's what I'm asking. Why would that not be a federal thing? You know what I'm saying?
unless they were
Maybe
needed to
bases
send,
that were in those states that the Western forces were able to capture or something. I don't know.
you just answered your own question. Like, if they were to take over a certain base with what they had,
Yeah,
then they would take the resources.
that's true. Thanks for solving my one plot hole that I had found in this movie.
You're welcome. Like,
No,
why California and Texas
right,
to
but
begin with?
you can't even speculate because they give like literally no shred of evidence one way or the other.
But I brought this up in our either our text or Discord thread, like
Yeah,
between us. For one, it's not the weirdest alliance.
is it though? What's weirder?
I don't know. But we've been
Exactly.
around for a really long time. This cannot be the only thing.
I mean, I don't know, dude. Texas and California are literally polar
Polar opposites.
opposites.
I understand. Okay, so point two, common enemy. Let's set our differences aside for the moment. Let's take this thing out, and then we'll go our separate ways.
Well, but
This is
like,
so crazy.
how bad did Ron Swanson have to mess up to get those two states and those two demographics
But
of
we don't even
people with?
know that it's the same one for one.
Yeah, that's true.
We have no idea. This is a
Yeah,
totally different world.
yeah. And so this just brings me action sequences is really cool. It was the assault on Washington was really cool. I appreciated.
The assault on Washington was one of my favorite moments.
It
Like
was
that
wild
whole
seeing the
sequence.
city warfare.
Yeah. And then the cars taken out, like trying to get away, and then the tank comes in and
Yeah, poor
blows everybody up.
decoys.
The girl trying to get out, they're like, no, 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 don't shoot me.
Yeah,
Bang.
yeah, yeah. That was rough.
I was gonna say that probably a majority of us need a clear hero and a clear villain, or it's
Yeah,
not worth watching. The true hero and true villain is very abstract. They're there,
mhm,
but I think that's maybe some inner dealings that we have to do within ourselves, like
mhm.
maybe a reflection, like take a look in the mirror and maybe analyze yourself,
Yeah,
because we are expecting to see, okay, this side's going to get demolished with this movie, or this side's going to, no. I and I think you're very observant, except for the things I brought up. Um,
continue to bring up another thing that I probably didn't notice.
there was something else I did want to say, going back to the whole military thing.
Mhm.
There are a lot of military bases in California and Texas that I
Sure.
just looked up. And now I'm sure there are probably, if not all states, have some kind of military presence. But I think the ones with probably a majority of the bases have more resources and supplies available. So depending on what side you're on, it's going to be heavy on both sides,
Yeah.
obviously, because they
Right,
had
but
an alliance with a group of states.
But like, was that part of the Western forces, Florida and all those? But anyways, but like to make it, you know, make sense logistically, maybe that's why California and Texas were paired together because of the reason you just said. Like, at least in terms of like him making this movie, maybe not like in the movie's universe, their like thought processes lining up. Maybe he's like, well, Texas and California have a lot of military bases. Let's put them together. That could explain their massive arsenal of weaponry and stuff.
Or he just wants to make us all crazy because it doesn't make sense.
But yeah, I think back to your thing about, everyone wanting an easy villain or hero to latch onto. Life isn't really like that. There's a lot of gray area in life and a lot of moral ambiguity, which,
Sometimes you're the villain.
yeah, that's true. Want to get into our scores and recommendation?
I did not score it, but I will
Okay.
give my recommendation.
What's your recommendation since you didn't score it?
Well, I feel like I still will say that there's no clear point for or against either side. That it's just a messy war because of something. Tyrannical government, possibly.
Yeah, I think
Authoritarian government.
they make one passing reference to like an Antifa massacre, and even that can be interpreted two different ways. Either
Yeah.
Antifa was massacred by the government, or Antifa massacred something,
Right.
like even the one of the potential reasons they gave
So vague.
could literally be a flip of the coin as to how you interpret it, which I love it.
With that being said, I recommend it because I feel like it's a good, thought-provoking film. And I think as long as you can set your political crap aside, maybe get off your soapbox.
Never. I can't. Makes me taller.
That's my line. I feel like the director sets out to make people think and ask questions. Given the state that our country is in with such a crazy divide, I think this was needed because people are looking for that hero and villain. And I think that they're trying to they're seeking out points to help boost their side or whatever. But I think there are some who will be able to appreciate this film, not just for entertainment value, but for its meaning and for its message. People are messy. People are going to always find sides of the same coin and fight for the other side or fight against the other side. But with all that, I definitely recommend it. I mean, you could probably wait for streaming if you're unsure. I know I've talked to a lot of people like at work that will probably wait till it streams. Yeah. But it's worth the money. I paid for 4 tickets and I do not shake my fist at the
right. I think, yeah, in terms of theater versus streaming for this one, my big like make or break point for an absolute must in theater is like heavy action, like to really take advantage of the huge screen, the surround sound, like everything. And while there's some action in this movie, it's not an action movie. So like waiting for streaming is totally understandable, and I think it's not going to lessen the experience of the movie if you watch it at home.
There were some moments that were like, oh wow.
Yeah.
It seems massive.
Some of that's what she said. Some of the night scenes where you're just seeing like the tracer rounds like fly through the air. So cool looking. Like I loved the visuals of the combat at night. It was super cool. But yeah, so you recommend? Yes.
I recommend the movie. However you go see it, just go see it.
Yeah. I think much like you said, I'll probably echo a decent bit. Like, yeah, it'll probably be misinterpreted and in that probably be rated lower than it probably deserves to be. But that's yet to be seen. I do think that people going to see it expecting, a political war movie are probably going to be disappointed,
It's
which
not that.
is what I just said. But if you
It's a
can,
movie about journalists.
disconnect yourself from that and follow the story that's presented, I think you'll really love it. And if you're anything like me with an A24 film, usually your appreciation only grows the longer after you've seen it. I would say I'll throw out this pro tip. I think all theaters probably do this now, but Cinemark 100% does and Regal 100% does. But on Tuesdays, unless a movie is releasing on a Tuesday, which by the way does not ever happen, all movie tickets are discounted on Tuesdays. So it's like $5 a ticket.
That's when we saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. So unless you're like literally afraid to go to the theater because Jesse Plemons may or may not be sitting behind you and ask you what kind of American you are, go on a Tuesday. It's worth $5. If you can't catch this whenever it hits streaming, whatever platform it'll be on, definitely worth the watch. The commentary is great, visually really really good. A lot of amazing shots. The cinematography is awesome. The
And for
characters,
like not a huge budget too, right?
yeah. Like that scene where they're driving through the woods as Sammy's like dying in the back seat and like all the sparks or
Yeah.
embers from the
Oh
burning
yeah.
trees. Super cool. Great movie. I would highly recommend this, and I would give it about an 8. You should
I think
definitely watch it.
I'd give it an 8 also.
Yeah.
Not 8 out of 100, but 8 out of
Well, thanks for clearing that up.
8%.
Yes, 9.5.
Yeah, right. Oh, we should have done that. That would have been
Yeah.
fun.
But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the movie, what you would rate it as.
Or destroy us because we're
Yeah.
bigots and
Yeah, exactly. Let us know if there were any Jesse Plemons in your movie theaters, complete with red or blue sunglasses. And if you got asked what kind of American you are.
I cannot wait for those answers.
Same. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace. I never know like how it's gonna go because it's one of those things. Like the more you talk about it,
Mhm.
the more stuff comes to mind, and you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And then discussion is had, and I feel like it was kind of cool that we didn't agree.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's kind of an issue with America right now. It's like, you don't agree with me?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
We must fight to the death.
Exactly.